Hello, my loves. Welcome to another episode of the Becoming You podcast. This week, I'm excited to bring you an episode where I was featured as a guest on Misha Akbar's Desi Daze. In this episode, we go really deep into talking about the parts of motherhood that no one or hardly anyone talks about, especially when you are excited and carrying that first baby to term. And so, Misha and I share a lot of commonalities in what motherhood was like after we had our babies. We both experienced postpartum depression. So we talk a lot about how did we deal with that? What was the shame that we carried around after, whether or not we connected with our babies? And eventually, how did we seek help and support? And both our missions on making this a topic that no woman should ever have to hide and carry alone in her life. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. And as always, I love hearing from you guys on what it felt like to listen to this episode. What is one or two things that you are taking away? And was there anything in this episode that you heard that made you feel less alone? Sending you guys so much love, and I'll catch you soon on the next episode.
I'm so glad you're finally getting the time to chat because I feel this has been a long time coming. I've followed you so much on, Facebook, all the stuff that you post about like parenting, it resonates so much with me. And I'm like, what would Visa do? Let me see. What has she posted today? Uh, I feel the way you empathize with kids, but at the same time, recognizing and realizing the challenges we have as parents. That's huge. I think not all of us realize that so much, right? We're always about, I need this thing done, and I don't care how I'm going to get there. It could be by screaming, it could be by just sheer frustration. And I'm like, I don't know how this lady does it, but everything she says makes sense.
Yeah, it is the hardest journey that I have ever chosen to walk on more than focusing on my own healing. It's there's another life or several lives, right, that you are impacting. And it's it's hard balance between the traditional parenting style, the yelling and the screaming and sometimes smacking. Our parents smacked once or twice, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we turned out fine, or so we tell ourselves, and so we're like, "Sometimes I just wish we could go to the traditional parenting." But, in the long run, that is not helpful, especially in the world we live in. The world we live in is very different to the world, like, our parents, brought us up in. And as a parent, we have to adapt if we want to maintain that connection with our kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to. I know we just like dived right in because I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm like, it doesn't matter. But, I'd love for everyone to just hear your story, your background. What is it that you do? And just sort of your journey into becoming, becoming a parenting coach. And I'd love for them to hear that, from you because I'm biased. So
You're very sweet. So I am a parenting coach and I help parents build a deep emotional connection with their children so that it lasts a lifetime. The biggest request that I get from parents is that I want my kids to be able to come to me with anything. And there's a lot of work that goes behind that if you want that to be true. It's not enough just to say it in words. We actually have to embody like what creates such a safe parent that your kids will come to you with anything, right? So that's the work that I do with all my clients. And I do it in a very different way. It's not about focusing on the kids and getting them to change. Majority of the work that I do with my clients is on helping them heal their own emotional wounds so that they're not projecting it onto their kids and therefore disconnecting from them. So my story of how I got here is a very interesting one. So I had a very traditional upbringing. I was born in India and I lived there until I was 11. And then when I was 11, my parents decided to move to England. So I was uprooted from everything that I'd ever known and abruptly moved to England. And, the challenges that come with moving when you're 11, I experienced all of it: the bullying, the racism, the insecurities about who you are and how you fit in, the fear of not belonging. I experienced all of that. But when you're growing up, you don't realize that. You just think this is life, and you just kind of experience it with just pulling up your bootstraps, right? Because our parents weren't tasked with asking us, how are you feeling? How are you handling this? Now, schools are very different nowadays, and the language that we use with our kids is very different nowadays. But I didn't have it at the time. So I just went through life. At 21, I got married and I moved yet again from England, uprooted my whole life and moved to the US. And with that, again, came a lot of challenges. I had a really hard time adjusting. I felt very homesick. I felt very lonely. And as a result, I experienced depression. And then at that same time, I was doing my MBA. I started my corporate career in the US. Around the same time, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So it was a lot. I was handling a lot in my early 20s. I got diagnosed with like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. And then came another bout of depression, handling this news that I had chronic illness for the rest of my life. And there was only treatment, there's no cure. And so, life just carried on. I dealt with it the best way I could. I had 2 kids. And then after I had kids, I realized that a corporate career maybe wasn't the right fit for me anymore, because I was just constantly torn between motherhood, career, and just constant stress from just a career. And so I quit. Like that was the only solution that presented itself at the time, because I felt like I was like locked in, caged in. And so I took the parachute of like, let's release the pressure that I'm feeling right now by quitting and figuring out life. And that really is where I embarked on my entrepreneurial journey. So I did not start out as a coach. I've gone through many iterations of being an entrepreneur. I won't go into all the background detail. But eventually it led me into life coaching, because I received life coaching from other people, and it changed and transformed the pain and the suffering that I was experiencing in my late 20s, early 30s, right? Because I had this picture perfect life. I had a loving
Yeah.
husband, I had beautiful kids, I had financial stability, I had abundance, financial abundance, not just stability, right? And yet on the inside, I was so deeply unhappy, and I felt so much shame around, how dare you be unhappy with all that you have?
Yeah.
Like, learn to be grateful. So I was really shaming myself. And so it led me to life coaching, because I really want to figure out what the heck's wrong with me. Like, how do I stop this
Yeah.
pain and this suffering? And so life coaching really helped me heal so many parts of myself and understand the self-inflicted pain of not enoughness, not feeling like I belonged. And that came from the fact that I didn't truly know who I was. I had just followed society's expectations for me. And I had never been allowed to explore or define for myself who I am and what I wanted in life. And so that's really what I started discovering through life coaching: was self-expression, self-love, self-acceptance. And eventually I, got into parenting, because after all the self-healing, I was finding that parenting wasn't bringing me the fulfillment that I desired. And it really led to even deeper exploration of like, how am I projecting my fears onto my kids? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
so the more I healed myself, the more I realized my parenting was transforming. And I really realized, oh, wow, like just by changing ourselves, we can change the way we show up for our kids. And so that's really
Yeah.
my mission in life now, is to like lighten the load that parents tend to carry and the pressure that they put on themselves. Like there's some perfect prescription to parent, and there isn't. And it's to really help parents tune into their intuition so that they can
Yeah.
be the most loving, compassionate, patient, present parent that they can be.
Yeah. I think, you touched on a lot of things there. This, you know, us following society's expectations of what we should be doing versus really looking back into what is it that we want to do? How can we sort of drive that message forward, right? Even when it comes to like parenting, there are certain ways of parenting, certain things that we've been taught, and we tend to project that on our kids. I mean, not even on purpose, because it's like so imbibed in us, like at a subconscious level. Like sometimes I find myself telling things to my kids that I promised I would never tell my kids, because like my parents would say that to me, and I'm like, I'm never saying this to my kids. And then I find myself saying verbatim, and I'm like, no, I need to take, kind of that step back. But you also spoke about depression and just going through, just that the motions of it. And I can imagine like at 11 being in a completely new country. And you're right, I went to, I think, 10 schools growing up, and it was always in the middle of the school year. There wasn't anybody to ask, like, how are you feeling? You make friends, and then you have to say goodbye to them, and you grow up with the sense of, I don't know, at least for me, my body and my physical self always needed change because I wasn't used to stability.
Mm.
So for me, it was like, I need to know, where am I going next? Or if something has been, a constant in my life, I didn't know what to do with it. So it's interesting that you said that, you once you kind of got used to living in the UK, you were then like uprooted again and you moved to the US. Um, and then you spoke about having that. I just learned this term a few days back, like geographical depression,
Mm.
where it's linked to the place that you are living in, right? Um, and then you spoke about going through postpartum depression with your kids as well. And that's really what I wanted to like touch base on today, because I think a lot of women go through it. I wish there were these conversations when I was having, my kids, because I was completely lost. I didn't know what I was feeling. I always thought it was because I was away from family. I'm in a new country. I just got married. So all these feelings, it's not postpartum. It's all linked to something, right? But when it happened to me again, 3 years later or 3.5 years later, when I had time to acclimate to a new country, made friends, had a support system, but those same emotions came back even more severely. I was like at a total loss. I'd love for you to like just touch base on like your experiences. And now that you are a parenting coach, looking back, um, or like just trying to understand like what helped you, how did you overcome it, or how did you learn to manage it?
Yeah. So I think, like, for every woman that goes through pregnancy, there's a certain level of expectation that comes with how you believe you're going to feel when the baby finally arrives. And the story that we are fed is this is the happiest you're ever going to feel. Your heart is going to crack open, and all of this love is going to pour out, and it's going to be blissful and joyful. That is the
Yeah.
story we are fed over and over and over again. And I truly, truly believed with every ounce of my being that that's how my experience was going to be. And it was nothing like it. It was a very dark place. I had no connection with my baby whatsoever. I wanted nothing to do with him. I was literally a feeding machine keeping him alive. My mother had flown out to help me. And I remember she would bring the baby to me. I would feed him, which was such a task. It was not an easy, like, he didn't know how to latch properly. Like, it was just, and I wasn't producing enough milk. So all of these struggles, right? And I felt literally chained to him. Like, I remember having this visual of my ankle, like a literal ball and chain around my ankle, weighing me down, imprisoning me into my home, that I couldn't even step away to go to a restaurant for 30 minutes to have a meal with my husband. Like, he had to come with me, or
Yeah.
there is no restaurant, right? Like, that is how resentful I was of him. And it scared me so much, because I was like, there is something deeply wrong with me that I don't feel happy. And there was the lack of sleep. Like my baby was not sleeping at all. And I remember just crying so much because the loneliest time is in the middle of the night when
Yeah.
everybody else gets to sleep and you don't. And the amount of resentment like is 10x, right? In the middle of the night, because that is when it's like 3 a.m. The baby just wants to be held. You just want to be in your bed sleeping and you cannot. So
Yeah.
it was a really hard time. And I remember like after the 6 week mark passed, the baby blues supposedly was supposed to have worn off. And I was thick in the middle of it. And I just remember telling my husband, something is not right because I just want to cry all the time and I do not want to face life. Like I just want to be in bed sleeping all the time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I need to go talk to somebody because I don't think this is healthy. And I don't think it's just a matter of time because my deepest fear was, what if this stays forever? And I
Yeah.
couldn't face another 6 weeks of it because 6 weeks had already felt like a lifetime. So I don't know where I got the courage from, but I really like dug in my heels and I was like, I need to go talk to somebody like today. And so I just remember looking through like whatever resource we had at the time, calling somebody up and getting an appointment to go talk to just some random counselor. I didn't even care who it was. I was just like, I need
Yeah.
somebody to talk to so they can tell me what's wrong with me and what is the solution. And that's how it really started. And thank God for this counselor because she was able to pinpoint correctly and say, like, you are not sleeping enough, which is why you feel part of the reason you feel this way. And so talking to her was like getting a permission slip that somebody now needed to take over and handle the baby's sleep at least for 1 or 2 nights so that I could feel like a sane person. And just having that outsider tell you that that's okay, that that's allowed was like, was like all of this pressure was released. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just me who feels this way.
Right. Yeah.
Like an actual expert who knows what they're talking about tells me it's normal too. And so that's what an outside and unbiased person to talk to really does. It makes you feel less like a crazy person, like there's something wrong and broken with you. What they're doing is validating the experience you are having. And when a
Yeah.
person is suffering, you don't need to swoop in with the medicine or the antidote to the suffering. The antidote is that someone listens and validates that what you're going through is okay, is normal. That's
Yeah.
why talk is so important. And forming a community and having these type of conversations is so important. Like there's so much relief in knowing I'm not the only one, that there's so many people that go through this.
Yeah. Oh gosh, absolutely. I think a lot of the things that you just said, it just brought back memories for me because that's exactly how I felt as well. Like just not having uh that validation, right? Like you how can you not be happy? You have a healthy baby. He's so cute and how can you not feel love for
Yeah.
him?
Or just
Why
just
do you want to
focus
sleep
on
so
he's so healthy, right? Like just focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had, issues with like latching as well. Like he wouldn't latch properly. And it was just, I started dreading these sessions. Like like formula. What's wrong with
Yep.
formula? Just give him formula. And I remember people saying that, how can you give formula to your child? Like that's like the worst thing you can
Yeah.
do, and I'm like, but you don't understand the emotional trauma that I'm going
It's
through.
almost as if once the baby's born, for a short while at least, the woman stops being humanized, right? It's
Yeah.
like she's the lifeline to keep the baby alive, but the baby's actually the more important one. It's not of equal importance. And
Yeah.
you almost become the feeding machine and the one that needs to hold the baby, right? So
Yeah.
so I totally get what you mean about dreading feeding time and the baby's well-being put over yours, because I too felt the same way. I was like, I don't want to breastfeed. Let's just give him formula. I think that will resolve some of the feelings that I'm feeling. And I got the same message from everyone around me that loved me dearly, But they were like, no, 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 just stick it out. Like, you cannot give formula. Like, breast
Yeah.
milk is the best.
Your baby will thank you when I'm like, I don't think that that's like on the agenda for kids, like when you're 18, like, thank you for breastfeeding me, mom. Like, I am who I am. No, I mean, I remember it got so bad for me after my second son. Like, my husband had to travel. And I remember I was just broken down completely, fully. Like, I had two kids. I didn't know what to do with them. My mom had already gone
Mm,
back. And I was a complete mess. And my second son was like 3 months old, and my husband was traveling. And then he came back, and I just said, I need to get out of this house. And he's like, sure. Do you want to like go for a drive? I'm like, no, I want to get out of this country. And he's like, okay. And he didn't realize I was serious. But for me, it was about, like you said, that we dehumanize the person, that I just wanted to feel like myself
mhm.
again. And for me, the only way for me to do that was to sort of go back, like, go back to Dubai, to when I was single and like not a mother or not a wife. And I just wanted to get in touch with that part of me, to just remember who I was,
Yeah.
right? And God bless his soul, he said, fine, if that's what you need to do to feel normal again, I'm going to support that. And I left him with like a 3-year old and a 3-month old. And I said, I'm going. And I remember expecting everybody to welcome me and be happy. But the first question I got was, who's feeding the
Yeah.
baby?
Yeah.
How can you leave your 3-month old
Yeah.
alone? Like, this is like, oh, this is the new age American way of thinking. And I remember feeling like so dejected that I just flew like 16
Yeah.
hours to be with my family. And this is what I got in return, right? So it's so true, like the way you say, dehumanizing that person, because there's just so much of unrealistic expectations that's put on us.
And it's like
I
there's a
also feel
whole
like
identity shift, right? People forget that you
yes,
were you before you became a mom. And all of a sudden, when you become a mom, it's like that supersedes this previous life that you have. And people stop seeing you as you. You are
I
the
mean,
mom.
you read everywhere,
Yeah.
moms are superheroes, we do this, which I agree with, but I think it puts so much of pressure. Like, at least for me, it put a lot of pressure on me. Like, I couldn't admit to anybody that this is not who I am.
Yeah.
Like, I'm failing at this.
And I've never voiced this thought before, but in a sense, there is a grieving period when you become a mom, or there should be, because there is a loss of that old identity, which you may go back to, once the baby's a little bit older or whatever. But there is a loss of independence. There is a loss
Yeah.
of your identity, right? And I think that is part of postpartum depression, because we're grappling with this new identity and a loss of a previous life, and nobody gives you the time to grieve.
Yeah. No, that is very true. And to this day, like, I sometimes think, how would my life have been if we didn't choose these like societal expectations and norms of, you grow up, you study, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, then you have grandkids. The cycle just kind of continues. And sometimes I'm like secretly envious of people who, like, we've actively chosen not to have kids. And I'm like, I didn't know that was a choice. I mean, it's just so therapeutic to say that out loud, right? Like, I'm like, like, I didn't know that was a choice. Um, would I have it any other way? Like, if you had asked me, I don't know, like when I was pregnant, I would have been like, yes, tell me. Because I remember when I was pregnant, the first thing I looked up was like Planned Parenthood, because I was physically not ready. I was mentally not ready. I was just not ready, period. Like I just gotten married. I didn't even know what like freedom was. Like you hear all these amazing stories about America. Your Archie's comic. You were like expecting that life to be true, and then you're like, there's no family, there's no friends, there's no support. You have to fill your own gas.
Yes.
Shops close at 9, and now you're pregnant.
Yeah.
So there's like so much of feeling that you're expected to just get used to,
Yeah.
right? And then everybody thinks that you're naturally supposed to be a good mom, that you're just supposed to overnight know exactly what to do.
Looking back now, like, is there anything maybe different you would have done? Or um I think that's a hard question because all you can really do is the very best that you can with what you know then. I think I would have maybe stood up and voiced what I needed much louder and much stronger and not given a damn about what anyone else thinks. Let them think that I am
Yeah.
selfish, whatever it is, right? I think I would have said, this is for my own mental well being. A happy mom means a happy child. And if that means I need to give him formula so that I can be more well balanced, then so be it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's probably what I would do differently if I could go back in time and advise my younger self. It's like, don't be
Yeah.
scared. Whatever decision you make is going to be the right one because it feels right to you. So trust your gut more
Yeah.
and don't be scared to express what you want because as long as you love the baby's going to be fine,
Yeah.
right? And in order for you to be
Exactly.
able to love the baby, you need to feel good about yourself and your life.
Yeah. No, and I think, like you said, you have to be kind to yourself also, right? You also need to, um, what's the word? Like just allow yourself to feel the
Yeah.
feelings without being bogged down by guilt. Like that's what I did. Like, my husband is like, what do you need to do? I'm like, I just need to sit and
Yeah.
cry, and just cry without any inhibition, like not worried about who's gonna hear me I just needed that time and space to myself and just have that support. And I think a lot of the times it's hard for people to have that kind of support. It doesn't always come easily because even for nobody talks about this, but even men, they are going through fatherhood.
Yes.
Right. And there are expectations on them as well, at least like living here, right? I don't know how it is in other places, but at least with my husband, he went through that entire phase of, oh my God, what am I doing? There's a living creature in my house. My wife is definitely not in the state of mind to do her
Yeah.
part. And like, what can I do? Like, or what should I do? Or how can I love this baby or take care of this baby or do stuff? And I remember like him telling me also, like, be kind to yourself. Like, it's okay. Like, we are in this together. Whatever you need, don't feel, uh, you know, don't feel like what your parents did or what your aunts did or what your uncles did or what my parents are doing, like dictate stuff to you. So there is all of that pressure. And I think, like you said, it's so important to be kind. And it's also hard, like, at least like for you, you felt that, it was it was almost like you didn't have a choice. You had to speak to
Mhm.
somebody. And I remember for me it was hard. Like I just couldn't bring myself to admit the fact that I needed to speak to somebody until it got so detrimental that, I was like, you know what? I can't be the best mom. So maybe I shouldn't be alive. Like I should,
Mhm.
give, like it came to
Yeah.
that point in life where my husband was like, you better go speak to
Yeah.
somebody because this is not working out for you. But it's also important to realize that there are resources right now, there is help right now. And there are tactics and techniques that you can use to sort of successfully manage it or come out of it. And I feel like with the work that you're doing in that parenting space, right, it makes sense. Like if anybody's thinking of becoming a parent or have kids right now, I always feel like my postpartum comes back every year. Like you said, every year the kids grow up, I'm like, I'm nope, I don't know why I did this,
Yeah.
or how can I. And so postpartum is, at least for me, it doesn't stop at a certain time, or it's not limited to giving birth and dealing with a baby. It's almost continuous and ongoing as your child, you know, grows, because it's a different experience every year.
That is so true that the motherhood or the fatherhood journey never truly ends because what the child or the children, they are becoming their own individuals, right? And as a parent, there are certain expectations or hopes that you have for your child. And oftentimes they might be in direct conflict with each other, or it might fall short of your expectations, or it might not be on the timeline that you want, or you might realize that your child is the complete exact opposite of you, or they're becoming the person who you wish you could be, but you were never allowed to be as a child, right? So there are all these really complex layering that happens as you see your child grow up, and you get triggered and reactive in so many ways. I always
Yep.
say that our children choose us so that they are sent to us so that we can work and heal our deepest wounds. It's not the other way around. Like we weren't, you know what I mean? Like our kids chose us so that we could do the work of healing ourselves. So their job is to trigger us, right?
Yeah.
Which is why parenting is the hardest job in the world. That's really difficult because I think that's why so much of traditional parenting, there's so much conflict involved because the parent is saying, no, this is not who you ought to be. This is who you should be. Like, this is what I need you to be, right? Respectful. Don't like express your opinion too loudly, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. Like, you need to become a doctor and engineer. How dare you follow an artist career? Like, that's not going to pay anything, right? And
Yeah.
traditional parenting forces so much of it on kids. Whereas the way I coach my clients and what I embody is the conscious parent, right? Which is you don't need me to tell you who you need to be, right? You already came built in knowing what you are destined to become, right? And my job, as much as it triggers me, annoys me, frustrates me, is to always let that be the guiding light. How
Yeah.
can I allow you to become more of who you need to be, right? While gently guiding you in the best way that I can, not forcefully, gently guiding you. Because there are some things that we learn because we're older and we're wiser and we have more life experience, right? I'm not
Yeah.
discounting that by any means. But just because you have an expectation or a dream of your child becoming a doctor and now they say they want to become an artist, it's their life. Like
Yeah.
you don't get to live vicariously through them.
Yeah.
And so that is hard, especially if you were brought in the traditional parenting style and you lived by the rules, right? And you are the good girl, the
Yeah.
good boy. And now your children, to bring them up in a very different way, takes so much courage, right? Now you're
Yeah. It
walking a new
does. It
path that
does.
has not been paved before. And God forbid what might other people around you think about how you bring your child up. But I truly believe that's what is going to create the next generation of kids that are confident, secure, and can actually have the skills to navigate this new world.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking, like, as you were saying this, that when you are addressing um these elements now, right? Like, if we are better parents to our kids, the chances are that they are going to be successful parents, when they become parents, if they choose to become parents, whatever their choices, right? They are going to be much more, I think the word that I want to use is like stable, because I feel like a lot of the stuff that I felt even when I went through postpartum, there was a lot of it that was rooted in like generational trauma as well. like, childhood trauma, the trauma of marriage, the trauma of expectations of what you should be doing when you're married. Like, I remember somebody telling me, you can't get married if you don't know how to cook. Like, what are you going to make for your husband? And I was like, but I don't know. Like, is that like a criteria that, to get married, you have to, because again, you are put in this mode of caregiver or caretaker, right? Like, okay, you're married, now you take care of your husband, you're in a new country, but that doesn't matter. You have to know all the answers. And now you're a mom, you still have to know all the answers. And so you really forget to focus on you because you're just not allowed to. There is no space for you to focus on you. There is no
Yeah,
space.
well, as a woman in South Asian culture, your self-worth and value is always defined by how well you serve others.
Yes.
And so it's really important that we do the work of breaking that pattern and that story because it is so damaging. If we are always taught to measure your value and contribution to the world through how pleasing and of service you are to others.
Because I feel that's such a toxic trait to pass on to your kids as well, right? Because if they see you as always in service or almost people pleasing to an extent where it's so self-sacrificial and so self-damaging that
And
you
that your definition of who you are is how other people see you.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's so important not to pass that on to our kids so that they understand that they define their self-worth and they have healthy boundaries, because that's one thing that is missing in South Asian cultures is health, is boundaries. Like, there is no room for boundary. This has been very, very, very helpful. I can just hear everybody like just nodding their heads like, oh my God, this is happening. This is common. A lot of people go through this. Um, I think just by having more honest and open conversations like this, we can definitely like break down the stigma and just normalize conversations around postpartum depression. I don't think it needs to be something that's spoken about like or whispered about or behind closed doors. um, do you have any other like tidbits or other nuggets that really helped you as you were managing your postpartum?
Just get sleep. I think hiring a night nanny would have been so helpful, and there is no shame in that whatsoever. Like if you have the financial capability to afford a ton of support, right? Whether that's a night nanny and a day nanny, um,
Yeah.
take it, advocate for it, because lack of sleep will lead to mental health issues, right?
Yeah.
So don't let anyone shame you into feeling like you're a bad mother or you did not do enough. You birthed an entire human into this world, and that is already enough, you know? So allow what feels good to you to be the most important thing, because if it feels good to you, that means it is right for you.
Yeah. I think that's such an important takeaway and something people need to almost like repeat consistently and constantly and give it a safe space to kind of resonate with them. Because you're right, if it's if it's right for you, it is right for you. You don't have to compare yourself to others or see what other people are doing, because they are doing what's right for them and their baby. Your baby, your circumstances, it's so unique to you. And I guess the other takeaway is there's always support.
I think it's very easy to fall into the story of I'm the only one. Whatever story you might be telling, I am the only one. And we feel so much shame because of that story we tell ourselves. And in a world of 8 billion people, I guarantee you, you're not the only one. Like, you're not that special in that sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think this is one of those instances where you don't want to be the
right.
only one, right? You
But we tell
So you,
ourselves the story of something's seriously wrong with me. I can't say this out loud because I'm probably the only one who feels this way.
yeah,
And the shame is what
exactly.
leads to the isolation and the suffering. And the only way to break the shame is through sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been fantastic. Um, I hope we can have you. I definitely want to have you back. I think we should do like a whole parenting segment because everything you said, I'm like, "Ah, I need to like revisit this." I think sometimes it just takes another person to validate your feelings and to give voice to it, to be like, okay, I'm not the only one who's going through these parenting challenges. And I feel as South Asian parents, at least for me, I sometimes struggle with that identity of, because we are that middle generation, our parents are South, they identify, they are South Asians, and then you are here in America, you're raising an American child, they refuse to identify as anything else. And then you kind of feel that identity that you grew up
Yeah.
with sort of
We're
disappearing.
we're the bridge, right? We're that bridge that's connecting the two opposing sides.
Exactly. But how do you do it in a way that's
Yeah.
safe, that feels more collaborative versus top down? So, thank you again, Visa. I love chatting with you and I look forward to having you.
Oh, thank you. This has been such a pleasure, and I've just loved every part of this conversation.